Evan. So for this enrichment exercise, I watched Cry Freedom. And excuse me if I talk too fast, but I really have a lot I want to say. Um, so basically, you already know this. Steve Biko, black liberal, extremely against apartheid, but he wanted to use peace in all situations. And with because his words were so powerful and really encouraged the blacks to embrace their culture, embrace their who they are, and be proud of themselves, he was considered a major threat to white officials. And Donald Woods, he was a white liberal who eventually became friends with Biko, and they worked together to help influence each other, and they walked in the right direction together to help fight for the cause that they were both so passionate about. And considering certain primary sources that I found while conducting research, this film very accurately presented the situation of the time period. And due to apartheid and white supremacy and control, blacks led a very difficult and unfair life within their own country and home. Towards the beginning of the film, Dr. Rumpeli, the doctor who's treating the injured blacks of the attack, is told that a secret black township was raided, found completely destroyed by the police. And according to the news, the police explained that many workers were found without work permits and were considered illegal, and that's why they presented themselves. But in reality, those policemen drove through the town. They broke down whatever homes, if you can even call those tents that. They broke down homes, crashed through people, livestock, anything in their way. The black workers are horrified, and they ran through the streets, screeching, screaming, warning the others. They snatched what little they could and just tried to escape anywhere to just go out of sight of the police. They were horrified. They were terrified. But these brutal white men, they snatched children, grabbed any black, regardless of race or age or gender. They beat them up, threw them on the ground, just abused them as they please. And a scene that hit me the most is that even in that situation, a white officer grabbed a black woman by her shirt and just took her to her corner and tore her shirt off. And it doesn't really show what happened after that, but I'm assuming it's rape. And the fact that in that situation, someone would have the sexual desire and take advantage of a black woman like that because he's a white superior, that just shows that really the white people had the right to do anything they pleased, anywhere, any time of day, to whatever they wanted to do, and the blacks couldn't do anything about it. These black people were absolutely terrified by the police, and they were beat up by them, and you report that they willingly presented themselves. Who would be crazy enough, especially as a black and segregated South Africa at the time, to admit they're illegal? They would be tortured, killed, sent back to their miserable old lives, This doesn't make sense. This scene particularly really, really presents the situation of apartheid really well. And after hearing about the situation and seeing the brutal injuries of her fellow people, Dr. Rumpeli demands Donald Woods, who is the head of the newspaper, to accurately report on the raid and reveal that the police were the offenders. Just like history, the whites were never held at fault for their actions, and they were able to blame everything on the helpless, weak blacks. And in addition, Steve Biko is on ban the entire movie because of his position as leader in the anti-apartheid movement. He's constantly supervised by the policemen. He can't even travel a few miles from his house, which is his ban site. And after Woods makes up his mind to help fight for the blacks and aims to reveal the death of Biko's eventual murder, it is to be published book, he is also declared a banned person even as a white and loses much of his freedom because he is anti-apartheid. His family is also terrorized by white men. His children are poisoned by his shirt and receive severe burns. His wife is called a black-loving bitch. This accurately portrays how the main goal of the whites back then was to remain in full power. They really didn't care about the torture and hardships of black people, and they wanted to preserve apartheid in any way possible and have complete power of every single event in South Africa. And Biko, although he was a black person, was a fellow human being of everyone. He was beat up and kept naked in his cell after being captured on his way to speak at Cape Town. He was bruised, bloody, starved, and in terrible condition. Even the doctor was horrified to see him. And he said that his situation was urgent. He had a lesion on the brain and needed to see a professional doctor as soon as possible. But since the officer was scared that he would escape, he drove Biko to a hospital 700 miles away. But since the roads were bumpy and underdeveloped, Biko, he just banged his head everywhere on the car on the way and died, because who can survive that condition? And even after murdering him in such a disgusting way, J.T. Kruger, the minister of police, reported that he died of a hunger strike. Yeah, right, faulting the blacks again and pretending that the whites are innocent. At the end of the movie, 20 or 30 so names of murdered blacks came up, and there were so many excuses: suicide by hanging, accidental slip down the stairs, shot while escaping. Like, they're just cowardly excuses for the brutal and unacceptable actions that the whites know aren't okay to perform, Like, why is it okay for these black people to be remembered in these ways? Why is it okay for their deaths to be unavenged? Do you really think these strong men risk everything to fight for the equal rights of their fellow brothers to die in such a cowardly way? No. Like, come on. Taking advantage of your power and rights, this is just unjust, and the director shows as well. And considering the EU of who controls resources and how, the film showed me that those who are in power really control resources through force, money, just the overall power they have. And if it wasn't for any of these, the white minority would never have been able to control the entirety of the black majority. It's because the blacks lacked every single advantage the whites had, aka the resources, and that they could be tossed around anywhere and degraded of value and importance. Even as Woods aimed to reveal the truth, he was a white. Oh, sorry. And yeah, I like to use this analogy when talking about this situation because honestly, the unfairness and brutality angers me so much. Like, if a random person barged into my house and brought along this entire group of them, and all of them as a whole were on the same side and decided to take over my house and just left me this much of a corner for my family and myself to live on, how would I feel? Extremely upset at the situation, but even more at the fact that I can't do anything because I have no power or the rights to. That no matter what I do, I'll be shot or killed or tortured in any possible way. That no matter how hard I can try and consider these invaders as my brothers or accept their existence in my country and my house, I'm always the outsider and the dangerous, the unwelcome one. And looking back on the units of Mao Zedong and the DRC, the innocent Chinese and Congolese, they were the ones who had to pay the consequences of the leaders and higher officials' actions and crimes. The Great Leap Forward, the Cultural Revolution, those led to the Great Famine and other destructive events that the citizens had to pay their lives or hard labor for. And for the DRC, all the kleptocratic dictators and the outside powers who were greedy and took advantage of the rich minerals. That's why the Congolese are in decades of violent, wars that took the lives of so many citizens. And that's why they're in physical labor all the time, because that's their mining is the only way of making money that the Congolese have in this situation that were created by the higher powers. And with all of the events that I've mentioned so far and seeing how both the truth and lies of each situation is revealed, I think that the director took the perspective of a black man and was against white supremacy, especially by making a major part of the film about how Woods tries to make Biko's death meaningful by publishing a book about him, as well as all the unfair situations the blacks endure. The director aims to reveal the innocence of the blacks and the crimes of the white people.